There's a lot going on in Israel right now. In fact, as we're on the phone, I'm looking at my phone as we're on the air because my alerts are going off almost nonstop. And what those alerts are, it says when there is activity going on in Israel. And right now there's a barrage of Hamas rockets coming into the southern portion of Israel around the Gaza Strip area. That was after Israel had been trying to take out some various strategic locations. The president is going to be attending, going to Israel as a show of solidarity. Logan, I think that's a really big move, actually. He's also moved now 2 carrier groups, the Eisenhower and the Gerald Ford, to the region, which is also the reason for that is to make sure Hamas understands that there's beyond Israel Navy, there's now U.S. Navy in the region, but more importantly to Iran to let them know.
The IDF actually just tweeted the IDF is currently striking Hezbollah terrorist targets in Lebanon. So there's details to follow. So we want to keep you updated that now is moved on, not just from Hamas, but now to Hezbollah in Lebanon. So that's happening right now. As you said, President Biden is departing from Israel in a pretty rough situation and a rough time to be going. Kind of a little surprised that his security detail and Secret Service are allowing this.
You know, it's interesting, Nasrallah, the head of the Hezbollah group in the north, which is a direct proxy of Iran, has said that he was not looking forward to an engagement because of the economic consequences and the consequences for Lebanon, because there, of course, that's right on the border there. Now, what's interesting about that, and I don't know how it plays out, overall, I think that you have to be, and I know this for a fact, that the Israelis are assuming there's going to be an incursion or at least activity, as you just mentioned, Logan, on the north. Now, the interesting issue is that portion of Israel and the Lebanese border has UN troops stationed there. Cece Heil does a lot of our work at the United Nations, and Cece, those troops are now put in harm's way because of this.
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's UN troops on the northern border, and there's actually some down on the south as well. And whatever's going on and what the attacks that are happening on the northern and southern border, they would be right there in the mix of things that are going on. But again, Israel is always trying to protect. It's literally their enemies that are putting these people in harm's way.
Secretary Blinken has been in the region. He's been meeting with the Israelis, the Jordanians, the Egyptians, and had dialogue with the Saudis. What is the diplomatic role here in a conflict like this, which is going to escalate in the next days to a full-scale elimination of Hamas? But what's the diplomatic role? I'm sure it's, and especially as it relates to the hostages, but also just generally in a situation like this.
Look, I've been highly critical of the Biden administration. I feel like they don't have a handle on what the State Department can do, the assets that the State Department has. Antony Blinken has not put forward, for instance, a peace agreement for Ukraine. It's just been a ravaging war in Europe. And now what we have in Israel is a scramble by Antony Blinken to go just a few days before President Biden goes. Now, I don't think that's a good use of the Secretary of State. The Secretary of State is supposed to go, have conversations, find a solution, a diplomatic solution, and you bring in the president to kind of finish the job and to seal the deal. This seems to be really rushed. My sources inside the NSC are telling me that Antony Blinken wasn't planning on going until the Biden team made the decision that President Biden would go, and then Blinken scrambled to go ahead of him a little bit. I don't know what the plan is. I don't know what the diplomatic plan is. Do we have Egypt opening up the gate so that they could take in Palestinian refugees? Are the Jordanians going to do this? What is the diplomatic plan? Because if the diplomatic plan is just simply Biden is going to tell Israel to slow down, that's not good.
I think that the escalation here is inevitable. I don't know if there's a diplomatic solution. The diplomatic solution, I would think, would focus on getting these hostages out. But one thing I'm hearing, Rick, I was on calls late last night and early this morning, is that Hamas is signaling through Qatar that they would like to see, they were willing to possibly release the hostages that are non-Israeli. So I'm thinking 9-dimensionally here, and I'm saying, well, the only reason they're willing to do that is to try to eliminate world pressure that's on Hamas right now, but still keep the Jewish hostages and the Israeli hostages. So 9-dimensionally, there's something else at play here with Hamas on this.
Yeah, look, there's no question. You hit it on the head. This is all about Iran. The full-scale attack, the planning, the hardware that was used, it's obviously Iran, and it's extremely troubling to hear the Secretary of State and others say that they don't have any evidence that Iran was involved. I say that's wrong. I think that they are completely lying about that. And by the way, why isn't Avril Haines, the Director of National Intelligence, brought in to ask these questions? We know it is Iran. We know that Iran looks at America and says, is this a threat of military action, or is this a credible threat of military action? The Iranians are very good at distinguishing between the two.
Rick, do you see any option for Israel other than the complete elimination of Hamas as both a political and military force in Gaza?
No, they have to get rid of Hamas, and remember that Hamas has 200 hostages. Think about that. We're trying to get rid of Hamas. Meanwhile, Hamas has grabbed hostages, and they're trying to say, don't do anything. Because we've got hostages. Those hostages are shields. And for all the cries of people saying, be careful about citizens inside Gaza, I would push back and say the people who are in Gaza who are not leaving are being used by Hamas. They need to be warned, get out of the way, because Hamas is using you. They're using you as a shield. And it's going to be extremely difficult for Israel to go through and try to figure out, imagine who's Hamas and who is just a citizen that decided to stay back and pretend like they don't have anything to do with Hamas. That's incredibly difficult, and you're asking Israel to do the impossible. I say that after this incredible terrorist attack, you see these videos where Hamas is ISIS. Anyone who is trying to stay put to be a shield with Hamas is being used. And I think that they've got to be told, you are putting your life at risk.
Then you have this whole talk of Israel's response. Will it be, quote, proportional? Is it going to be a proportional response? And the reality is, Cece, when we talk about proportionality, I think it's very important. We've sent a letter out on this today. Our legal teams are working literally around the clock, folks, on this stuff. We sent out a letter today, and there it is, that went to Secretary Blinken, because he's over there, that what the term proportionality actually means.
Yes, we did, because just a layperson would assume that proportionality, and actually this is the way that pro-Palestinians are spinning it, that it should be, how many people is Israel killing versus how many people is Hamas killing? What's the level of, the force that they're taking? And that is completely erroneous. Under the law of armed conflict, there is actually a standard that is used for proportionality. And the victim, under this proportionality standard, the victim of the attack, which is Israel, can eliminate the existing threat. So when you hear proportionality, that means that Israel is completely their actions are completely legitimate to wipe out Hamas, because Hamas absolutely attacked Israel. And again, under the law of armed conflict and proportionality, they can eliminate that threat.